Several days ago, we read a Wordsworth sonnet called Nuns Fret Not at Their Convent's Narrow Room. And it was really Wordsworth talking about the sonnet itself and the pleasures of finding a definite form and working with it to bring about a particular poetic effect. In that one, he was really exploring the nature of form itself, at least formal structure, to get one's thoughts and feelings into a given arrangement of rhymes and meter, taking the form from Petrarch, using it for his own purposes. The poem I want to look at today is called Surprised by Joy. And I have to admit, I was surprised by this poem when I found it in the Norton Anthology recently. I had been teaching some other Wordsworth poems, and I had forgotten this one, though the title should certainly be familiar from C.S. Lewis's memoir. But it's a different kind of sonnet, and I think it shows what can happen with a particularly unruly and powerful emotion when the poet has been schooled in a particular form of writing so that he's able to take this overwhelming experience and bring it into something that is not only universal, but also deeply personal to him. I want to look at the poem, and I'll read it, make a couple of comments as usual, and leave it at that. Surprised by joy, impatient as the wind, I turn to share the transport. Oh, with whom but thee, long buried in the silent tomb, that spot which no vicissitude can find. Love, faithful love, recall thee to my mind. But how could I forget thee? Through what power, even for the least division of an hour, have I been so beguiled as to be blind to my most grievous loss? That thought's return was the worst pang that sorrow ever bore, save one only, when I stood forlorn, knowing my heart's best treasure was no more, that neither present time nor years unborn could to my sight that heavenly face restore. This poem we read in Wordsworth's biography was occasioned by the death of his daughter, Caroline. She had died some years before, as you can see from the poem itself. But what particularly struck me and moved me so much when I read it was this sense of the pang of having this joyful emotion, turning to share it instinctively with his child, and realizing in that moment that he had not only lost her, but for a moment forgotten that she was gone. How could I forget thee? Even for the least division of an hour, what could have happened to take the loss of this child from his daily, hourly, constant recollection? So to think of this loss again after momentarily forgetting it is the worst pang that sorrow ever bore. Save one, when I stood forlorn in that first loss, when the death of his child first struck him. Even with this depth of emotion, which truly is so moving, there's something about bringing it to the imagination in a way that gets at its real nature, that requires the poem itself. And the sonnet form here serves Wordsworth's emotion and serves it beautifully, which is, I think, what we ask of poetry, that language be adequate to what it is that we experience, and not just adequate, but somehow capable of bringing that experience as a consolation to others who feel the same thing.